Today I'm talking about three different books that I read recently, no particular theme between them, but I did enjoy them all quite a bit. First up, The Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet by David Mitchell. I'm a bit of a David Mitchell fanboy, so I was saving this as a treat for myself, and the writing is as gorgeous as I've come to expect, although the scope is a bit more reined in compared to a Ghost Written or a Cloud Atlas. Most of it takes place during a sort of gold rush where various European nations are trying to secure trade relations with Japan, which means navigating various cultural differences, a language barrier, and justified suspicion of their motives. Our main protagonist is a mild-mannered Dutch accountant named Jacob de Zoet, who's stranded in the poky little trading post of Dejima and becomes infatuated with a Japanese medical student. In keeping with the author's other work, this book never really settles on a genre, instead flitting between thriller, comedy, romance, and a whole section not dissimilar to The Handmaid's Tale. My best stab at a unifying theme is trying one's best to be good in the face of a situation that's riddled with compromise and corruption. This fits nicely into what I've come to understand as the shared moral core of Mitchell's work. Quite a simple moral core when you dig down to it, but coming from a writer of such sophistication, I've always found that endearing and somehow reassuring. Next up, Tell Me an Ending by Joe Harkin. Now, this is actually the first book that I've read based on a TikTok recommendation, so I'll repeat the premise that sold me on it. In a world where people can choose to have traumatic memories erased from their minds, a bunch of disparate people suddenly receive an email that says, "Hey, you know that memory wiping procedure you've heard about on the news? Well, you had that, and if you want to find out why, you can come to our creepy facility and get your memories back." Immediately, my writer's brain was jealously buzzing with all the story potential, but between her 5 point-of-view characters, Harkin does a much better job of drilling down into these possibilities than most writers ever could, taking us on an addictive tour through identity, insecurity, and trauma. The idea of memory erasure isn't new, of course, but Tell Me an Ending is smart enough to reference existing works in this space, such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and build on them, turning it into a working conversation with others, rather than pretending to be wholly original. Each of the characters' situations is uniquely odd, their relationships with those around them complex and believable, and because the root of fear is not knowing, the effect of them not fully knowing themselves or their loved ones builds a palpable sense of dread as we creep closer to finding out what was so awful that they chose to forget it. And finally, Frankissstein by Jeanette Winterson. A strange narrative stitched together from disjointed scraps, which seems only fitting. In some of the scraps we're following a young Mary Shelley at the infamous gathering of 19th century literati where she first dreamed up Frankenstein, and the Shelleys, Lord Byron and so on are delightfully brought to life by Winterson here. Elsewhere in the book we're thrust into something resembling the present day but with more sex bots, amidst the surge in artificial intelligence and body modification. And if you're paying attention, you'll begin to notice some uncanny resonances between these time-separated storylines. Trying to tease out which of the plot threads in Frankissstein are actually happening is a fool's errand, because, after all, there's always the annoying retort of, well, it's fiction, so none of it's happening. But it does conveniently create another resonance with the recurring theme of what is real. There's resonances all over the bloody place, is what I'm saying. Overall, Winterson does a brilliant job of recapturing the themes of Shelley's masterpiece with a modern spin, proving that they hold up remarkably well in the light of recent developments. Frankissstein does deal with some heavy themes, but overall it feels a lot less gloomy than its almost namesake. As the subtitle says, it's a love story, but if that's not your thing, then it's also a Kurt Vonnegut-style splash in philosophical waters, and the funniest existential crisis you'll have for a while.